All right, we are on part 3 of our, I think, 6-part course, maybe 5 by now actually, into character traits. And on the first week, we discussed the whole idea of how character traits work and the idea of judging people favorably. Then we moved last week into anger, right? Right? All right, we did anger. And I'm sure all of you had a fantastic and calm week, not losing your tempers at all. Okay, don't share with me, I understand. This evening, we're going to look at a related topic in character traits, which does appear in the Torah, as we shall see. And the topic tonight is, you hit me so I can hit you. Revenge and bearing a grudge in Jewish thought. And we'll start with a quote I just found, so I thought I'd throw it in there, of one of the great leaders of the last generation. His name was the Chazon Ish, lived in the Holy Land of Israel. And he gives a good introduction. He says, if a person constantly tries to improve their character traits, it is possible that they will eventually reach a level that they no longer get angry. And by the way, they say about Chazon Ish, he never got angry. Will not feel hatred or resentment, will not take revenge nor bear a grudge, will not have ambitions of seeking honor, which we're going to come to a little bit later in the course, and will not desire mundane pleasures, which we also will be looking at in the course, because all these topics he's brought down are related. And let us have a look at the Jewish source for this idea of revenge and bearing a grudge. And once again, it appears in the Torah portion called Kedoshim, to be holy. So if you want to be holy, a good place to start. Let's have a look. It's in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. And it says, don't take vengeance, don't take revenge, and don't bear a grudge against your nation. And then it says, you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. A very famous quote, which is found in the Torah, of course, and it was so popular, even the New Testament hijacked it and put it over there. But it is Jewish in nature. We'll see love your neighbors, love yourself. Now we're going to discuss that. But we're going to see those 3 topics are actually related. Tom, you got that? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Let us begin with Rashi. And Rashi is going to, Rav Shlomo Yitzchaki, we've quoted him many times before, he is going to define what these terms mean. What's the difference between revenge? And what's the difference between bearing a grudge? Is one better than the other? Is one worse? I mean, they sound pretty much the same. Let's have a look what Rashi has to say. And this is based upon the Talmud. And he says, what's an example of this revenge or bearing a grudge? An example is given, and I'll just do it outside for a second. Look inside. Imagine someone comes to you and wants to borrow your sweater. Okay? Or you go to someone and want to borrow their sweater. And they're like, no, I don't want to lend it to you. Right? They just don't want to. The next day they come up to you and say, can I borrow your t-shirt? And you're like, no, you don't lend me sweater, I don't lend you t-shirt. This, according to Jewish sources, is called revenge. Then what exactly is bearing a grudge? So bearing a grudge, says Rashi, based on the Talmud, is the same scenario. Someone comes to you and says, can I borrow your hairdryer? Right? You want to borrow someone's hairdryer, rather. And they're like, no. And they come back to you the next day and say, can I borrow your garden shears, your lawnmower? And you're like, of course you can. I'm not like you. I lend things. That, say the sources, is a simplistic understanding of bearing a grudge. Let's do that again, and we're going to see that our entire day is made up of instances of people say things, do things, act in a certain way, and our reaction to them could constitute revenge. Or, and by the way, this, according to most sources, this is a separate thing. Bearing a grudge is a separate mitzvah, negative mitzvah in this case, in the Torah. Or someone says to you, people lend things to you, or you want to borrow things from other people, and you end up saying, you know what? I'm better than you. I lend things. Or, say the Torah sources, you even think that you are better than them, or you think you are kinder than them, and you bear a grudge in your heart against them. That is the simplistic understanding in Judaism of revenge and bearing a grudge. And this is its own negative mitzvah, i.e. things you're not allowed to do. The same Torah that says you can't kill, can't commit adultery, on and on and on. These 2 laws are among them. Says Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, revenge is one of the sweetest sensations, matok, that a person can have. It feels good. Taking revenge against someone, even in English, sweet revenge. You did it to me, I'll show you. You said that about me, just wait till I show you what I can say about you. Oh, you didn't hold the elevator open for me. I said hi, and you completely blanked me. You gave me the hand. Next time, when you come to me, you're going to get the same hand from me. That is revenge. And grudge, obviously, is holding it inside. And it is sweet, says Ramchal. That's the Torah's demand, that we suppress this impulse. It is an impulse. And basically, the Torah is telling us to be like angels. This is considered to be a very high level of being. Says the Rambam, it is natural for a man's character and actions to be influenced by their friends and associates. Basically, all our character traits are going to be influenced by the people we hang around with, whether that be our family, our friends, people we work with, and for him to follow the local norms of behavior. Therefore, he says, this is a good prelude, a person should associate with righteous people and be constantly in the company of the wise, so as to learn from their deeds. Conversely, keep away from the wicked who walk in darkness, he's talking metaphorically, so as not to learn from their deeds. This is a very important Jewish concept, which applies right through the course, and it goes like this. In Judaism, surround yourself with winners. If you want to be good, hang around with good people. Now, people say to me, well, that doesn't make sense, because don't we Jews want to influence the world? And shouldn't we be with bad people to show them the right way? And the answer is no. Generally speaking, you want to stick around with good people who act well, who you can learn from, especially, it's another discussion for now, when it comes to marriage and relationships, you want to stand around, hang around with people who are good in nature. Now, it's going to happen that at times you're going to meet people who aren't so good. And you'll be working somewhere, and you may have a boss or a colleague, or you'll be out somewhere, you meet someone who isn't so nice. That's when all these pieces of advice we're talking about have to kick in. We don't choose these things. Are we clear so far? We're building this up. Okay, next phase. And this, by the way, is implied by King Solomon, says the Rambam. He who walks with the wise will become wise, while one associates with fools will suffer. Right? You have to associate yourself with good people of fine character, and therefore you yourself will have fine character. Carries on the Rambam, and then we'll stop and think a little bit. Revenge is a very bad trait. Now, it seems like all the traits we're discussing are bad, but the Rambam seems to go out of his way to say this is a bad one. A person should train themselves to rise above their feelings, above all worldly things, for men of understanding consider all these things as vanity and emptiness, which are not worth seeking revenge for. Now, this is very, very difficult to understand. First of all, the Hebrew words are better. He calls them hevel. All things that happen to you, he says, are hevel. Now, hevel is an interesting word. It means vanity, but it also means steam. Steam, that which comes out of the kettle. Why steam? Does steam feel? Can you feel steam? Yes. It can burn you. Can you see it? Sure you can. But is it there? It's nothing. It's just air. Says the Rambam, that's how we have to see the world. Oh, that's the implications, I think. Or we can learn into the Rambam. Everything that happens to us, the attitude we're meant to have is, it's all steam. It's all steam. Let me give you an example. One of the things that leads us to take revenge is being rejected. We feel rejected. I want to borrow something from someone, they say no. I want to date someone, they say no. I want to go to a college, they say no. Life is, for the most part, being rejected. And being rejected leads us to want to take revenge. Now, based upon this Rambam, I want to share an idea with you, which if you really hear it, could change the way, it worked for me, the way you look at the world. Put your hands up, please, if in your lifetime you have been rejected. Yeah? You two never been rejected? Yeah. I think everyone at one point in their lives, would someone like to give me an example, if I'm picking on someone, of a time they were rejected by somebody else? Okay? Anybody here was rejected? You put your hands up. Would you like to give me it's difficult and uncomfortable, but if you don't mind sharing it, a time that you were rejected? Yes. Okay, what happened? So you went for the interview, and what happened? They never called. So you sat down, you had an interview, and then how did you feel after that? Take a seat. Take a seat. Okay, so take a seat over there then.
Well, it took like some time because sometimes they don't even tell you that you didn't get the job. So like maybe I thought I got it for a period.
But when you found out you hadn't got it, how did you feel?
I said, well, that sucks for them.
It's their loss, it's not mine. Okay, very good.
What's it meant to be?
Here. That's a good attitude to have. Mina, you have been rejected before? Give me an example of time you were rejected.
From a grad school program.
Okay, what happened?
I applied to a very small grad school program
Mhm.
and had very high hopes of it.
Mm-hmm.
And got a call saying that I didn't.
How did you feel?
Pretty upset because I didn't really understand why.
It's upsetting. Anybody else? Anyone else want to share a... I usually get like a relationship one over here. Anyone being dumped by a boyfriend or girlfriend over here? Has that ever happened to you? Like all of you in perfect relationships? Yes.
I went on a date with this guy that I thought was really cute and I thought we had a really nice time.
Yeah.
Never heard from him again.
That was it? He took you out and then...
Yeah, he seemed really interested and then
Wow. Nothing at all. How did you feel after that?
I was surprised.
Yeah. You should be. You seem like a very nice girl. I'm surprised too. I'm surprised too. Okay, so it wasn't a nice feeling, I'm going to assume, right? It's not a nice feeling. Okay, what I want to show you is that none of you have ever been rejected. It's never happened before. Let me explain what I mean. You just gave me an example, Amina Joy, that you applied for a job or for a college position, or you went out with some guy, and I asked you what happened. And you told me, well, I applied, we sent the application, and they went for an interview, and then they got back to me and said, you're not right for the position, and I felt terrible. You see, what you told me was a story, a very nice story, and a convincing story, but a story. I asked you what happened. What actually happened was that you saw some words, and you maybe filled out a letter, you wrote some words down, you sent it off, and then you got a phone call, and somebody says something. That's what happened. Now, you made a whole story about it in your mind. Well, I really want to go to this college. This is what I want to do with my life. This is what I want to be. And I should be in this college. Or I'm so beautiful and fantastic. How can this guy do that to me, right? I don't understand. And we feel terrible and feel depressed. But that's a nice story. Now, it's not a crazy story. You're not insane. You didn't think that a bat came out of the heavens and bit you on the neck or something. You're not crazy. It's a valid story, but it's just a story. In other words, if you could break down life to really what happened, in most cases, you got a phone call or an email, you went out with someone, words, you came back home again. That's what happened. You make a whole story, he doesn't like me, why not? And it brings up a lot of pain from the past. It happens to everyone. I'm not picking on you. However, that's just a story. Now, the Rambam, I believe, you want to learn, as we say in Hebrew, Peshat, understanding in the Rambam. Rambam's like, it's all hevel. Don't start to make stories in our lives. Because when we make stories, we end up ruining our lives. So what I want to show you this evening is that we can go through life deciding how we want to live. We can... What? What's wrong? What are you laughing at? What? Oh, this? Oh, this. Oh, so like 7 years ago, I got into a relationship, and this girl broke up with me, and she broke my heart, and I've been carrying around ever since, you know, because, you know, it's just like painful, and you know, it wasn't such a nice experience, and it really, really hurt me. And then, you see, about 7 years ago, I got into an argument with my sister, and she did some really bad things. And you know what I'm saying? It's just getting really, really, well, and like, I walk around, you know, I'm surviving. You know, I'm getting through life. You know, you can survive like this. You know what it's like. But, you know, I find it hard to get out of bed in the morning. Of course you can't get out of bed in the morning. You got chairs weighing you down. You've got to take them and put them down. And suddenly you'll be able to walk around freely. I hear this from people who go through these experiences, break up relationships, I hear it all the time. I couldn't breathe, couldn't get up in the morning. Of course you can't. These things are weighing us down. And in Judaism we say, They're hevel. They're not real. You attach importance to them. They may be painful, but it's your decision whether you make them real or not. And this concept of taking revenge or bearing a grudge is based upon taking things from the past and carrying them with you for a month, for a year, for 5 years, or for 10 years, or in some cases, for 48 years. I want to show you a video I just saw a couple of days ago. It just happened. And if we can get this thing to work, bam. This, a little bit of context to it, happened a few days ago and involves, anyone see this video? Involves two guys who were football players back in the 60s. And they are now in their late 70s. And they got into a fight. They got into a fight back then. They'd not seen each other, so they made an event to try to get them to get up on stage and made a fun event about it, to talk about it, to see what happens. And look what happens over here. Thank you. You got it? Oh, okay, the volume's not so good. Okay, basically, we have no volume. But here we see the guys up on stage, and they're standing there, and he offers him a flower, and he pushes his hand away, and he hits him, and now look at the cane, he's got the cane up there, and he's smacking him, and he's going at each other, and they rip down, the whole thing starts coming down, and people pounce on them. Can you see this? And people don't know where to put themselves, and these two guys in their late 70s get into a fist fight over an event that happened some 48 years, you can't make it up, some 48 years ago. Thank you so much, I appreciate that. In other words, these people have been carrying around this problem with them, and this other guy and that original fight has been living in their head rent-free. Now, talk about bearing a grudge. Taking that person with you, literally he's walking around for 40 years with a chair weighing him down, waiting to smash it on someone's head. And that happened. This is what the Rambam, I believe, is talking about. As for bearing a grudge, he says, a person should wipe the matter from their hearts. Wouldn't that be great? Just cut and paste it out and never bring it to mind. As long as they bring the matter to mind and remember it, there is the possibility they will seek revenge. So he's like, you see, bearing a grudge is its own problem because you carry around with you. But the reason it's so bad, according to the Rambam, is that it's going to lead you to take revenge against that person. Therefore, the Torah condemned holding a grudge, requiring a person to wipe it away. Don't remember it. This is a proper quality, and look what he says now, which permits a stable environment, trade, and commerce to be established among people. Okay? In other words, that's how society runs. So we have to, as I always like to say, think globally, but act locally. That's a very Jewish idea. I stole it from the Green Movement, but it works spiritually as well. You got to think globally. My job in this world is I want to make the world a better place. So like, hey, everyone, let's go out there and start campaigning and doing Occupying Shabbat, whatever it is, right? No, we act locally. Because my interaction, my ability to get over something that happened 48 years ago is going to improve my life, my family, the people I'm with, and all of society eventually. And all of life is based upon these concepts. Okay, so the question I get asked now, which I'm going to pre-answer, yes? Oh, no, something happened. Absolutely something happened. I'm saying that the perspective we can have is don't turn into a story to reflect on yourself and reflect on somebody else. Someone cut you up in traffic. Oh, that person's a beep, 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 and a beep, beep. And we're doing it. Like, what actually happened? Someone's in a big lump of metal, and they move their car in front of me. Then we make a story, they try to cut me up, and it was kind of, that's a story. All we're saying is something did happen. I'm not denying something happened, but the perspective we put on that thing can change everything. Someone said something terrible to you. You hear? Now we're going to see later on, it may have happened for a reason, you may have learned from it, but in essence, am I going to punch that person out? And the answer is, we don't. So one answer is because what happened? their fist, of which doesn't happen most of the time, of flesh and blood and knuckles, went against my face and I felt some pain. That's what happened. How I relate to that occurrence is up to me. Now, that's a very different example because someone gets physical with you. But hey, I mean, give me another example. There was a girl, she was, I mean, this sounds like a terrible story, but it's just a story. She went to college that I teach at, and she's dorming with two girls. And on the second day she was there, these two girls approached her and says, "We don't like you. We don't want you in the room. Please find another room." Ouch. She packed her bags, crying. Right, terrible. The rest of the semester, she was depressed, had to move to another room, carrying with her. She came up to me, and I asked this time, I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, there's two girls, they're so mean, they're so nasty," and this to me, an 18-year-old kid, "and so horrible." I was like, no, you tell me the whole story. What actually happened? What happened was, you went into a room, you opened your bag, you put things on shelves. Some people said something to you, you took those things, you put it back into your suitcase, and you moved to another room. That's what happened. Imagine going through life like that. Wouldn't it be amazing? I mean, I'm not saying I'm there, but what a way to go through life. That's just what happened. I mean, I know people who do live like that. No matter what you say to them, boop. However, is that what's expected of us? If someone insults you, are you meant to completely, I am just a bulletproof vest, nothing hurts me? So the Rambam says no. The Rambam says no. You are required, according to Jewish law, to do something when something happens to you. And look what the Rambam says. When one person wrongs another, the latter should not remain silent and despise that person, right? As it says in the book of Samuel concerning the wicked, Absalom did not speak to Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon. There's stories in Jewish history where this happened and great wars happened because of them. Rather, a person is commanded to make the matter known. And you meant to go up to a person, this is halacha, but this is Jewish law. If someone says or does something bad to you, you're meant to take them aside for their good. For you, you're calm, you're good. But you're meant to say, "Why did you do that to me? Why did you ignore me when I spoke to you? Why would you say such a horrible thing to me? How could you not do that for me?" You're expected to do that. "Why did you wrong me regarding this matter?" says the Rambam. And there's actually a mitzvah when you do that. They're meant to admonish a colleague. Remember, we said friends are there to help you improve. If afterwards the person who committed the wrong asks their colleague to forgive them, you should do so. A person should not be cruel when forgiving. And there's a story of Abraham. We prayed to God. Someone had captured his wife. And he was very, very open to, able to take revenge because that person found themselves in a compromising position after kidnapping his wife. Abraham could have taken revenge. He didn't. He prayed for them, took his wife, and left. And they learn out from that story, that's the way you should be. You should speak to the person, tell them you're upset. If they apologize, try to forgive them. After how many times? So the answer is, if the wound is still fresh, and you're not up to the what happened as opposed to story level, then, say the rabbis, you should say no. Wait a little time. They should come back a second time. By the third time, if they've fixed the wrong they did. If they owe you money, you can't say, "I apologize," you got to pay up. But assuming they've done that, and it's purely an emotional thing, by the third time, you should try to forgive the other person. And the way you do it is important. Okay, now once again, we're in the same world. How are you meant to do it? By the way, just a quick story while we're on this topic. There is one of my mentors, I actually just posted one of his videos, is a great doctor and psychiatrist who for the last 20 years I've had a relationship with him and read his books and going to his classes, and he gives seminars. His name is Dr. Abraham Twersky, one of the most spiritual people that I know, written maybe over 50 books at this point. He tells the following story. I heard him give the story once. He tells a story that he used to have he's a psychiatrist, and he had an addictions clinic called Gateways in Pittsburgh. And since he was a religious Jew, the convent, there was a convent, a lot of nuns, and they wanted their people who had addictions or problems to go and see him, because he was a very godly man and very respected. So cool. So, a quick side story. There was actually a priest who was an alcoholic. True story I heard from him. Priest was an alcoholic and came to him, and Dr. Twersky said, "You can't drink any alcohol at all. You understand? You're in the treatment program now, but I have to take the sacrament and I have to drink the wine." He says, "But you can't. You're an addict. If you start with a little thimbleful, ends up being the bottle, ends up getting completely wasted during your sermon," which he was a number of times. So the guy says, "But I can't because you have to drink wine. What can I do?" So he says, "Well, and he spoke to the head of the seminary, who said, 'Well, what do you Jews do?' right? Because you also drink wine. And he says, well, we Jews, we can use grape juice. No problem. He says, we'll have to find out whether we can. This went up all the way. It reached the Vatican, I believed, and they issued a ruling for all alcoholic priests who have sacrament. They're allowed to use grape juice. And that halacha was learnt out in the church from this Dr. Abraham Twersky. So anyway, so the nuns would go to him when they had certain problems. So he tells a story, a very telling story, and I experienced this in my life a lot as well. This nun had come a long way to visit him, and she made an appointment. And it just happens sometimes, you forget about the appointment. And for some reason, he was out of town that day, and he forgot to cancel the appointment. So this nun schlepped in 1 hour, sits there waiting for an hour after 2 hours, and then to schlep back. The whole day's gone. So he felt terrible when he found out about it. So what does he do? He called her to apologize for not being there. And as he picks up the phone, he's like, I'd like to... She's like, oh, no, Dr. Twersky, you do not need to apologize. Forget about it. It's all forgiven. He goes, no, but I want to explain what happened. I had your... He goes, no, don't apologize. It's all good. And he says, but I want to apologize. And she's like, you don't need to. He's like, you're wrong. You need to be upset with me. I need to apologize, and then you can forgive me. That's how things work. That is normal, healthy behavior. And he says, maybe that's the reason why you're coming to see me in the first place. Because you haven't faced up to a lot of problems people have done to you, and you've actually buried it deep down, and what you actually do is to bring it out in a respectful way, but say, I'm upset. I'm upset the way you treated me. Don't make that mistake again. And let's make another appointment, and I forgive you. That's how normal, healthy people work, and that is the Jewish view. It was exactly the Rambam we just read. That if a person upsets you, you better say, oh, no, I forgive you. No, I'm upset. Please don't do that again. And I forgive you, and then we move on. That's how normal, healthy people act in character. How are you meant to do it? Well, a very famous Rambam as well says that Maimonides, a person should admonish their colleague, should not speak to them harshly, okay, until they become embarrassed. By the way, embarrassing another person in Judaism, right, what's called making their face lavan, making their face white, so all the blood rushes away, is akin to killing them. It's considered to be killing. Now, it's not a capital crime to embarrass someone, but if a person embarrasses someone, that is considered to be one of the worst things you can do in Judaism. This is not my opinion. I'm quoting the classic Jewish sources. And I think I mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Embarrassing children with jokes and certain things about them, especially in class, if you're a teacher, that stays with a child. A slap will be forgotten. Not allowed to in this country anymore. But punishing them is acceptable. But embarrassing someone in front of their colleagues so everyone laughs at them, right? We still, for the most part, have them in our dreams. Everyone have dreams like being embarrassed as a kid, right? Or find themselves like, remember being naked in the classroom. You ever have that thing? I'm still like sitting exams, right? Where I haven't like studied and I'm like not wearing my pants in class. You ever have that thing? People watch this in England. Pants mean trousers in America, not underwear. I just have to be clear because in England, pants are underwear. Fine, but they have these kind of dreams, right? And these things, because these things stay with us. So embarrassing someone in Judaism and making their face pale is not good. So you should not embarrass them, as it says in Leviticus. You should not bear a sin because of them. In other words, if someone says something to you, you should go up to them, which is why you never rebuke someone in public in front of anybody else. So number one, you speak quietly. Number two, you take them aside, okay? Number three, this is what our sage says, should you rebuke to the point that their face change color, you actually get the sin yourself. It bounces off them and bounces back onto you. From this, we learn that it's forbidden for a person to embarrass a fellow Jew. How much more so is it to embarrass a person in public? Even though a person embarrasses a colleague is not liable for lashes, it's not right, it's still a great sin. Okay? Do not embarrass your colleague. Embarrassing them is one of the worst things you can do. It's uncomfortable, but uncomfortable is different from embarrassment, especially in front of other people. Okay. So we're talking about revenge and bearing a grudge. And we said a lot of stuff. But I'm going to turn it on its head for 1 second, because if you know your Judaism, you'll see that a number of places it says that revenge is a great thing. So how can that be? Let's have a look at the sources first of all. We see in the book of Numbers, Israel is ordered to attack the Midianites in revenge for what they did for us. So God commands us to take revenge against certain nations. Okay. 2, we know that Samson asked God for revenge against the Philistines. Right? The Philistines had captured him. They tied him up, remember, to the walls. They shaved his hair off. Eventually his hair came back. They gouged out his eyes. He begged to God for revenge against them. And God said, you got it. And he pulled down the pillars. The pillars came down. And they squished the Philistines and squished him at the same time, actually. And they died. Not only that, God himself, as it were, takes revenge. As it says in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 35, vengeance belongs to me. Whew, that's getting really strange. So 1 second, Rabbi, you're telling me the same Torah that says don't take revenge, don't bear a grudge, speak it out, talk to them, figure it out, try to apologize, get a forgiveness. It's not the first time, try again the second time, not the second time, third time, but the third time. It's on their heads. Now you're telling me that vengeance is a good thing. It's a contradiction. So what's up with that? I'd like to hazard a guess as to how we're going to try to resolve this contradiction. It's a fascinating contradiction. Tough question, right? It's not my question. It's asked by the commentators. I'll give you one answer, and maybe during the week you'll come up with your own answers as well, which is what we should try to be doing. So I heard from my great teachers and scholars the following thing. Actually, revenge is a great thing. It's really good. If someone does something to you, they deserve to get revenge for what they did. If someone hurt you or didn't pay you, then you should hurt them back and you should repay them. That's a godly trait. We're told that we're not allowed to do it. So how come we're told that it's a godly trait that we're not allowed to do it? And the answer is because we don't know how to do it. But if you were to find a person who's very, very great, on the level of Samson, on the level of Moses, or a leading person in society, a great leader, such a trait is important because they have figured out how to do it. In other words, let's say someone comes up to you and says a really nasty thing to you. I want to speak about speech maybe next week. Okay? They curse you out or they embarrass you. Your reaction is you want to embarrass them back. Torah says vengeance is good. You see, the problem is we don't know how to do it. What does that mean? I'll do the same thing they did to me, but it's different. Because when they did it to you, you were really hurt by it. On a scale of 1 to 10, 7. But when you take revenge, do you think that what you do to them is going to be the same? Do you know the same words to them could crush them completely? Even though they did it to you. And it could be a 9 out of 10 for them. And you're like, well, it's their fault, they did it to me. Still can't do it. When God takes revenge, as it were, there is justice. And justice is a great thing. And justice is a fair thing. And what goes around does come around. Because eventually all of these different levels on actions between people will end up somehow, sometime in that person's life. Listen, according to Kabbalah, maybe in another life they have to come back in order to get it. That could be as well. But there is a din and cheshbon. Everything is accounted for. Every word is accounted for. Every bad thing that happens to you is accounted for. And everything will be leveled out. The playing field will be leveled out eventually. But if you try to do it, it's going to end up being unequal. So to you it seems an eye for an eye, but in Judaism, that's not the goal. Which is why when it says in the Torah, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, never did it ever mean a person pokes at my eye, I poke at their eye, which in certain countries of the Middle East, they still do. That's never, ever happened in Jewish history. There isn't a single Jewish source out there that takes that eye for an eye literally. Or maybe Judaism is the literal eye for an eye. What is it when it says eye for an eye? It says Rashi and all the commentators, it's a financial thing. If a person hurts you in a certain way, you are allowed to, pokes out your eye, for example, work out the worth of an eye or the worth of a hand. There's a whole area of, I think, of legal expertise in this area as well. and they have to pay a financial reparation for what they did to you. Never in Judaism did that come under the idea of revenge. That's a form of justice. We work out the worth of an eye, or the worth of the car, or the worth of the business, or the work of the friendship, whatever it is, and it gets sorted out financially. Never are we told to actively go after. Even though it's a good thing, we don't know how to do it. Let's jump back, we have a few minutes, to our verse. Jump back to the first page, if you will, because we've done a good, thorough investigation, and we said, don't take vengeance. Okay, we hear that. Okay, we worked some techniques, how to work it out. And we said, don't bear a grudge. Why? Well, because bearing a grudge is a bad thing. You carry it with you for 40 years, right? It ruins your life, but also it leads to revenge, right? In this case, a good smack with your cane over this old guy's head, or whatever it is. And then the same pasuk, the same verse says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Now, first of all, it sounds so nice, isn't it? Love your neighbor like you love yourself. I mean, first thing you should ask yourself is, why can't I just say, love everybody? Like the Hare Krishnas. We'll be walking around, like going around the airport, hugging. You Jewish? Yeah, come give me a hug. Like, you live next door to me? Come give me a hug. What's this as yourself business all about? There's a lot written on that. I'll give you one simple idea, just so we have it in our heads. If you don't love yourself, you're not going to love anybody else. That, says Rashi, is the Torah obligation for good self-esteem. If you think you are garbage, you will treat other people like garbage as well. There is a mitzvah to think that you are great. That is a mitzvah. Not to be a, as we say in Yiddish, schlemazel. I don't know what that word means. I don't know how to spell it. I made it with a dictionary, but you know exactly what I mean. So the question I have right now is, don't take revenge, don't bear a grudge, and then love. What's that got to do with it? Say the commentators, let's move forward. First of all, this idea of loving other people. You shall love your friends as you love yourself. So Rabbi Akiva, this is a fundamental principle of the Torah. Ze klal gadol b'Torah. As your children one day, as my children will sing, Amar Rabbi Akiva, v'yahavta l'reyacha. Sound familiar? L'reyacha ka'amocha, ze klal gadol, gadol b'Torah. And that's why I'm not a chazan. Okay, you have to love it. This is he says, really, this is the center of Judaism. Everything else is commentary. Besides the Sefer Chinuch, a beautiful commentary, to love each member of Israel with a soul love. One should have, what does that mean? You should have compassion for your Jew and his property, just as one has compassion for themselves and their own property. As the verse states, you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. The elements included in this mitzvah follow the general principle that one should treat another person the way they would treat themselves. In other words, it's in the reflexive, isn't it? You should love others like you love yourself. That means use yourself as the measure. I don't like it when people are rude to me, then don't be rude to them. Right? This is a very famous idea. That which your friend doesn't like, don't do. Right? That which you don't like being done to you, don't do to them. Right? That's the opposite. I love your neighbor like you love yourself. Protect their property, prevent them from being harmed, speaking only well of them. We'll speak about speaking next week. Respecting that person. Not glorifying oneself at their expense. The sages have said regarding this last point, one who glorifies himself at the expense of their fellow has no share in the world to come. Now, that's a big statement, right? Putting yourself up by putting other people down is considered to be one of the worst things you can do, whereas one who behaves with others in a loving and peaceful manner fulfills the verse, Israel by whom I am glorified. It says in the Sefer Mitzvah Gadol, imagine you're sitting down. Beautiful example. And you're cutting a piece of meat, and you cut your left hand with your right hand, and then you see this being done. Stupid hand. What were you doing? Why didn't you watch what you're... Or you see me walking down the street, and I trip up with my right foot, and I kick my right foot with my left foot. Stupid foot. What would you think about me? You think I am smoking the wrong cigarettes, right? Imbibing the wrong liquids, and you'd be right. That's insanity. Why? Because I'm one person. Right? I'm one person. So too, if we see everyone else as me, then how could I ever get angry with you? And this is a level. But how could I get upset with you? Yeah? So if we use ourselves as the mirror against other people, and by the way, we're very good at giving ourselves good excuses, right? When someone comes late, we're all upset. Where were you? I waited. But when we're late, oh, well, it wasn't my fault. You hear? We're very kind to ourselves and give ourselves benefit of the doubt. Don't get angry with ourselves. Don't take revenge against ourselves. But if we use that and project that onto other people, it's much more of a calmer existence. And that's all. Finished with one last source. God, blessed be He, said, love means you do not do or say to someone else something that you know is harmful to them. Do not ask, how do I know what bothers that person? Am I a prophet? I know what upsets them. This is why the verse includes yourself. Learn from yourself that which you know in your heart. And that is what Hillel, one of the great teachers of this idea, meant when they said, whatever is hateful to you, do not do unto your friend. This is the whole Torah, he would say, Hillel, and the rest is commentary. We're going to stop over there. Thank you all very, very much. We will pick this up next week when we speak about speaking and the different laws of it. Have a great, successful, calm, and non-vengeful week.